Hi everyone, welcome to the first video, Fox Fixes, Ranging with Alex. That's me. Last year we picked this 2017 Winnebago Minnie travel trailer. Since then we've put over 10,000 miles on it traveling across the states. And now that we've landed in this beautiful Vancouver, BC, I figured it was time for some maintenance. Today I'm going to walk you through a full bearing service and a brake inspection. Plus, since the wheels are already off, I'm going to do a light rust treatment on the leaf springs to keep everything solid.
First, let's talk supplies. You can find all of this at any auto parts store. For this job, we'll need new bearings and races, some brake cleaner, a grease gun, and I'm using red and tacky grease. For the leaf springs, I'm using Permatex rust treatment, followed by a rust oleum protective enamel. I've put a detailed list of all the materials in the video description below. We're starting on one side of the trailer. A quick tip: loosen your lug nuts before you put the trailer on jacks. Now let's get it up in the air. I'm using the jack from my truck, which is rated for 2,500 ton, plenty for this 5,000 pound trailer. Once it's up, I'm placing 3,000 pound jack stands directly under the frame. Whatever rig you have, just make sure your stands have enough capacity to handle the load. Once the wheels are off the ground, we can pull them off and lower the frame onto the stands. There we go. Next, we need to pull the dust caps. These keep the dirt and water out of your bearings. Pop the black rubber plug, then grab the cap with some pliers and give it a pull. If it's stuck, don't be afraid to use a hammer. We're replacing these with new ones anyway. After that, remove the cotter pin holding the adjusting nut. You should be able to spin the nut off by hand, but use pliers if it's tight. Now, the drum should slide right off the spindle. Watch out for the washer and the outer bearing. They'll come right out with it. Now it's time to clean everything up with some brake cleaner. Since the wheels are off, I'm taking the opportunity to clean up the leaf springs. They're still in good structural shape, so no need to replace them, but they could use a cosmetic refresh. I'm starting with 80 grit sandpaper to grind off any loose or flaking rust. Once that's done, I'll wipe them down with acetone and let them dry. I didn't catch the actual spraying on camera, but I'm applying the Permatex rust treatment. This stuff is great because it actually converts rust into a primer and stops further corrosion. I followed the instructions, applying several layers and then let it cure for a full 24 hours. Let's get back to the drum. To get the inner bearing out, we first have to remove the grease seal. I honestly just use a claw hammer for this. They sell specific seal pullers, but a hammer works just as well. Now use plenty of brake cleaner to wash out all the old grease and road dust inside the drum. If there's any stubborn, sticky dirt or light corrosion, some 80 grit sandpaper will take it right off. Once the drum is spotless, we need to knock out the old races. I'm using a 1/8 inch pin punch and a hammer. If you end up with any small scratches on the surface during this process, you can smooth them out with a Dremel or some 1200 grit sandpaper. Make sure your surfaces are perfectly clean and apply a light coat of grease to the new races before installing them. I'm using a race driver set here. It makes the job way easier since it comes with different sizes to fit perfectly. Now grab some gloves. Put a glob of grease in your palm and pack the new bearings using a circular motion until the grease forced through the other side. You can buy a bearing packer tool, but honestly, save the money for a cold drink when the job is done. Once packed, drop the inner bearing in and make sure it seats correctly against the race. Grease the new seal before tapping it in, and that's the bearing replacement done. Now for the brakes. Before the drum goes back on, I'm giving the whole assembly a thorough cleaning. I'm scraping off as much brake dust as possible, then wiping everything down with brake cleaner and paper towels. Check the base of your spindle where the seal rides. You want that surface smooth and free of deep grooves. Otherwise, your new seal won't hold and you'll end up with grease all over your brakes, which is a safety hazard. I'm also hitting the brake pads with some 80 grit to freshen the surface and then giving it one last rinse with cleaner. Here's what you're looking for. Make sure nothing is bent, the actuating arm moves freely, and there's still plenty of material left on the brake magnet and shoes. Also, check that your springs are snappy and the adjuster wheel turns easily. Ready for reassembly. Put a healthy amount of grease on the spindle and slide the drum back on. Follow that with the outer bearing and the washer. Thread the nut on and hand tighten it. I like to use pliers to bottom it out. Then loosen it and bottom it out again to make sure everything is seated. Finally, back it off about a quarter turn. These bearings need a tiny bit of play to stay cool and rotate smoothly. Slide in a new cotter pin and bend the ends back. The washer and the nut are usually fine to reuse, but I always recommend using a new cotter pin. Now use your grease gun to pump grease through the circ fitting until you see it starting to come out. Fill your new dust cap with grease, smear a little around the edge, and use a small punch or screwdriver to gently tap it into place. To wrap up the rust treatment, now that the converter has cured into that nice matte black finish, I'm hitting the leaf springs and the drums with a top coat of black Rust-Oleum. The last step is adjusting the brakes. If your brakes have the spring wrapped around the adjuster, they're self-adjusting. You're good to go. But if the spring is below the adjuster, like these, you have to do it manually. Pull the rubber plug from the back of the brake assembly. Stick your adjustment tool or a flathead in, and click the star wheel upward to tighten it. Spin the tire as you go. You're looking for a slight drag. This part can be tedious, so take your time. Once both sides of the trailer are done, you're all set. This whole project took me about 2.5 days, but it's worth the peace of mind. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next fix.